6 o'clock, we'll call a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Clearlake at City Hall at 14050 Olympic Drive, Clearlake, to order. Pledge of Allegiance first. Vice Mayor Purda, would you do the honors?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence if we think about the over now 600,000 Ukrainians that are pouring into southeast Poland. I had a chance to email with some Rotary members over there, and it's a very strenuous and dire situation there. Let's think about some moment of silence and give those people some strength. Okay, thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Mr. Flora?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Councilwoman Overton. We go to our voting.
Councilmember Kramer?
Aye. Apparently not.
That's okay.
Sounds good to me.
Are you okay doing it online, Tina?
I'm not refreshing.
Nobody is.
Oh, there we go.
Aye.
How about you verbally announce the vote?
Can you announce the results of the vote, please, Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Thank you. We'll go to presentation of a proclamation declaring March 2022 as a March for Meals Month. Whereas on March 22nd, 1972, President Richard Nixon signed into law a measure that amended the Older Americans Act of 1965 and established a national nutrition program for seniors 60 years and older. Whereas the Meals on Wheels Association of America established the National March for Meals campaign in March 2002 to recognize the historic month, the importance of Older American Act Senior Nutrition Program, and raise awareness about senior hunger in America. Whereas the 2022 observance of the March for Meals campaign provides an opportunity to support senior nutrition programs that deliver vital and critical services by donating, volunteering, and raising awareness about senior hunger. Whereas volunteer drivers for Meals on Wheels program in Clearlake are the backbone of the program, and they not only deliver nutritious meals to homebound seniors and individuals with disabilities, but also carrying concern and attention to their welfare. And whereas senior nutrition programs provide nutritious meals to seniors throughout the city and help them to avoid premature or unnecessary institutionalization. Whereas senior nutrition programs also provided a powerful socialization opportunity for millions of seniors to help combat loneliness and isolation. Whereas senior nutrition programs in Clearlake deserve recognition for the contributions they have made and will continue to make to our local community. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Clearlake does hereby proclaim March 2022 as March for Meals Month and urges every citizen to take time this month to honor our senior nutrition programs, the seniors they serve, and the volunteers who care for them. Our recognition and involvement of the National 2022 March for Meals campaign can enrich our entire community and help end senior hunger in America so no senior goes hungry. Signed by me, March 3rd, 2022. Can I hand this to you, ma'am? Please.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. This year is 50 years of for Meals on Wheels, so it's an even bigger celebration that we've made it 50 years to help support our seniors, our homebound seniors. So we're doing a special thing at our senior center that we're going to be having a mystery dinner to do our fundraiser for March, because we all try to raise some awareness in March on and some funds for our seniors. I just kind of want to put out there that, you know, it's even $5 donations that provides a meal for one of our seniors. Most of the time we can support, provide meals for a senior for a full year for what most of us make in a few weeks. So, I mean, that's kind of unbelievable that for $1,800 a year, we can actually provide food to a senior that's homebound. It's really not that much if you think about it in the long run of the cost of everything. But we've tried to stay very efficient on how we do that. So I hope that this year people will help support our Meals on Wheels program with, coming to our fundraiser on the 19th. It's going to be a great mystery dinner, and we have some of our wonderful community members participating in it. So I hope you come and help raise that funds to keep our Meals on Wheels program going, because we almost went down before the pandemic. You know, we were ready to close. So I hate to say it, but the pandemic kind of saved us, and the Rotary, actually, our Clearlake Rotary really saved us. So I really appreciate, everything that they do for us. So hopefully the community comes together and recognizes our Meals on Wheels drivers, because they do. In fact, today we actually saved 2 of our clients today by being able to call an ambulance for them. So it's kind of one of those run days where we have 2 that were in the hospital we were trying to hunt down, and 2 that we ended up calling. So they are more than just delivering meals. They, sometimes we're saving these people. So, luckily enough, all 4 of them are good, and so we're thanking for that. We're very thankful for that. But if it wasn't for these Meals on Wheels drivers, we're not sure where they would have ended up. So, please come and help support our meal program and our Meals on Wheels drivers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Overton. This is the time for public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forward under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item, and comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody from the public? Ma'am, could you come forward and identify yourself at the podium here?
My name is Margaret Garcia.
Could you come over here, please?
Oh, gosh, I just wanted to make a real quick comment. My name is Margaret Garcia. I live here in Clearlake, and I just wanted to say my mom worked for Meals on Wheels and for many, many years. And so it's something that's kind of dear to my heart. And if I could find out about volunteering or driving or anything like that, I'd be happy to do that. And then I wanted to know where your fundraiser is going to be.
It's going to be at the Senior Community Center. Do you know where that is?
In Clearlake?
Right, here in Clearlake.
Okay,
yes.
I know where that is, yeah.
And you can also find it online if you just go to hsscclearlake.org.
All right.
And there's information there too.
Great. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And just come by and see me, or see me after the meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Do we have any written public comment, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I have one from a Michelle Binkley. I don't see her present, though. Would you like me to read what she wrote?
Yes, please.
Okay, she said she has an electric and water supply issue to her dock at 12608 Lakeshore Drive.
Okay. Do I understand it correctly that you're setting up a meeting with it, or have set up a meeting?
Yeah,
Mr.
so
Flora?
this is a property owner that's impacted by the sulfur fire rehab project that has some concerns. So we've set up a meeting with staff to to meet with her and her husband next week and discuss issues.
Great. Do we have anybody on Zoom that has any public comment, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised.
All right, very good. We'll go to the consent agenda. Anybody from staff wants to pull one of these, or if not, we open it to the public. Anybody from the public wants to pull one of these? If not, we'll bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Please
I'd like
proceed.
to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by, I'm not sure who was first, Vice Mayor Purdock or Councilman Claffey.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Councilman Claffey, I guess that's your one, this one. Okay, we'll vote on this. Madam Clerk, do you have the results of the voting?
All in favor, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. We'll go to item number 5, discussion and consideration of financing options to facilitate additional road maintenance projects. Mr. Flora, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So we have a couple of folks joining us on Zoom, but just to give a brief introduction to this item. So, we're always looking for opportunities to get more projects done in the city. The faster, the better. And one thing that has been discussed over the years was the possibility of doing some type of debt financing in order to get a larger number of road projects done in a quicker manner. And so we've done a little bit of research on that, and we did a contract. Actually, it was kind of towards the beginning of COVID, and then we didn't make a lot of progress until more recently with NHA advisors, which they advise government clients on financing options. And so they have a little bit of a presentation to go over on some options that we want to put before the council and see if it's something you're interested in moving forward on. I think there's probably some advantages and disadvantages both ways, but this is one opportunity to get some projects done with Measure V funds earlier than what we've been doing now, which is just kind of pay as you go each year, and we've been doing a lot. But one of the reasons that we think, we're running up against a time where it's going to make less and less sense is because we're going to start seeing an increase. Interest rates are still at a pretty historic low, and we know they're going to be moving up fairly significantly this year. And so now's kind of the time for the council to consider this option and see if it's something you want to move forward with or not. So with that, we have Mike Meyer and Leslie Bloom from NHA Advisors, and so they are going, make sure they have sharing. They're going to go ahead and jump into some slides on the financing piece, and hopefully we can kind of work through that, and then we'll talk about the project side a little bit more and see what the council wants to do.
Thank you and good evening. Before I get started, I want to ensure, can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Could you identify yourself too?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Slotin and City Council members. My name is Leslie Bloom, and I'm the Vice President with NHA Advisors, the city's municipal advisor. We have been providing the city with financial advisor services for about 5 years. And is on the call tonight. And who I believe has met the City Council before, we have been working with staff to help provide some preliminary analysis related to funding street CIP using Measure V funds. We have prepared this very short presentation that provides a little background on the revenue stream, some financing options, and then some considerations related to the current market environment. Let me see if I can make this in full screen. Okay. In our discussion with staff, we understand the city has a streets-related CIP, and we were asked to provide some preliminary analysis as to how much of these projects might be able to get financed up front if the city decided to pursue a financing strategy. And before we walk through our analysis, I'll note that there are several core objectives to consider when developing a financing strategy for the city. The first is to consider the optimal mix of how much debt and how much cash is used to fund a project. If debt is used, making sure to obtain the lowest possible rates and flexible terms if the city wanted to pay the debt off early. The second objective is to ensure that the mix of debt and cash provides the city with optimal resources to tackle the projects on time and maximize the enhancement of city streets. And finally, if the city does issue debt, the goal is that annual debt service payments are at a level that leaves a healthy amount of Measure V available for pay-as-you-go projects, as well as to ensure that there is healthy coverage of revenues to debt service to assist in obtaining the lowest interest cost. Measure B is the city's 1 cent sales tax, and it went into effect on April 1, 2017. It is a special tax, and therefore funds must be used for improving city streets. At present, Measure V generates approximately $2.5 million annually, and this tax measure sunsets after 20 years from the date it went into effect, which is 2037. Measure V revenues can be financed against for loan proceeds used to finance street projects, and can also be utilized as pay-as-you-go financing, or pay-as-you-go basis, excuse me. Here we ran some example numbers to determine how much funding could potentially be produced by financing against the Measure V revenues. As previously mentioned, approximately $2.5 million in revenues is generated annually, and the measure currently sunsets in 2037. So based on this sunset, we looked at two different terms, both a 10-year final maturity and a 15-year final maturity, with the latter coinciding with the sunset of Measure V. And we then ran different annual debt service payment options. The three options were $1 million of annual payments, $1.25 million in annual payments, and $1.5 million. And each of these we ran at the two final term options. So in total, we ran 6 potential financing examples, with the estimated funding generated in the current market detailed in the box here on the right of this slide. And based on these options, we found that the city could potentially raise somewhere between $8.6 million for a 10-year financing, with $1 million in annual debt service payment, up to about $18.1 million for a 15-year financing, the latter being with a $1.5 million in annual debt service payment. So the more that the city borrows, the more it costs in annual debt service over the longer term at a higher rate. However, less remaining funds would be available for PAYGO. And alternatively, you could borrow less over a shorter term at a lower borrowing rate, leaving more of Measure V revenues available for PAYGO and flexibility. The city does have flexibility to create a financing structure that best fits within its needs. These are just examples. So, alternative terms, alternative repayment structures can be evaluated. And finally, I will note that the results that we are discussing here assume a direct placement with a bank, which we believe in the current market is more advantageous than an option of issuing public debt. Turning to this next slide, the interest rate market has been fairly volatile recently, really over the last couple of months. Shown here is a 20-year history of the 30-year MMD. MMD is municipal market data. It's the benchmark index that is used for pricing tax-exempt financings. And as you can see to the right of the slide, right of this chart rather, there's been a recent spike in rates, and this is really due to the market projecting several increases by the Fed in 2022. I will note, however, that from a historical perspective, interest rates are still very low. And to add to the current economic discussion, there's also been significant construction inflation. Construction costs over the last year have increased rapidly, with inflation figure in the sector coming in over 8%. And we don't know if this is a short-term phenomenon or if higher inflation is here to stay, but CPI figures have been, the highest that we have seen in decades. And really just, given the recent economic changes, I wanted to point out that we've seen some agencies, change their financing plans or rather accelerate their financing plans, given the upward pressure on rates as well as the upward pressure on construction costs. And then finally, turning to this last slide, here we have included the steps that would be needed to complete a financing process. If the city decides to pursue a financing for its capital needs, it's about a 2-month process from start to finish. And the timing of this is for a loan that, again, is directly placed with a bank. A public offering would take a little bit longer just due to some of the added requirements with issuing public debt, both the credit rating and disclosure documents. And with that, I will turn it back to you for some questions, if there are any.
Do you have any questions about the sort of financing part of it? I mean, we may need to circle back to this after we talk about the,
Do we have any idea on interest rates?
looks like,
It's 2 3/4.
And a half.
Based on market changes that we're seeing.
Do you know what our credit rating is?
The city doesn't. When we don't have to get a credit rating. If you decide to pursue a public public offering, then we would go through the rating process, and that the rating analysts will ultimately determine your rating.
So those interest rates are strictly bank-based at this point, what they are today?
Correct.
Anybody any questions? Mr. Kramer, any?
No, I'm waiting for the rest of the presentation. I understand what they're projecting there.
All right. Mr. Flora? You want any-
yes, trying to. Trying to add our city engineer in case he wants to make some comments, but, okay, 1 second. So we've done a little bit of analysis. I mean, we haven't flushed out, obviously, every scenario at this point, but we did put together some possible projects in kind of looking at different areas of the city, and so we wanted to kind of show you a scope and scale of what could be done. Now, what you see here is kind of a mix of overlay projects and double chip seal projects like we've seen. You see here in the avenues, what's excluded is, you know, the projects that we did this past year, that big section. But overall, all these projects you see on the map are it's going to be about 30 million. So even if we went with the high-end scenario of about 18 million, you know, we still wouldn't be able to do 100% of these projects here. We wanted to kind of give you an idea of this. And so, I mean, I think, you know, we need to know if the council's interested in this at all, how aggressive you want to be. We certainly, I think from a staff perspective, wouldn't recommend borrowing or making a debt service payment of more than $1.5 million a year based on Measure B revenues, and being able to make sure that we're safe and we have a buffer. I mean, there's going to be, I'm sure, some type of recession in the next 10 years that we're going to have to prepare for, and so forth. You know, there's some different options. We could focus on trying to do more expensive projects and do fewer of them, and then save, say, less expensive projects like chip seal to try and do on a pay-as-you-go basis like we've been doing. One other option might be just trying to do a ton of chip seal, and chip seal where appropriate all of the, you know, gravel streets in the city. That type of thing. There's a lot of options here. We kind of need to get some feedback from the council on how you feel about this. And so, I mean, if you have some specific questions, we do have some maps that we can look at a little bit more on. Like this blue stuff is all public streets, and the red ones are private streets. And then we can kind of show paved and unpaved and all that. I mean, the point of tonight isn't to look at, you know, which road do we want to pave. We don't have to decide that at this point, but we need to see if there's a strategy the council's interested in moving forward with this process at all.
Councilwoman Overton.
Okay, well, I'm all for moving forward. So, and like I said, it just costs us more every year that we wait. So I would like to see, probably, since a lot of our complaints are on the dirt roads, I would like to see some of the more chip seal personally, you know, and some work done. I know we want to do these avenues, and it's always the avenues, but these streets down here are getting to where you can't get down them. And I just know these streets because of our Meals on Wheels drivers going down them all this time. But I would, you know, I like, big projects are great, but I think the chip seal has been working really well over there in the avenues. I'd like to try to continue that program and try to get more of the streets done and work on ways to, I think if we start with that, then we can start working on ways to get them paved.
Yeah, I should add, I mean, we do, we've discussed this before, we do plan on doing as much as 10 more miles of chip seal this year regardless, so that's something that we would obviously factor into the project list as well. We could take a big swipe of that off, but.
Yeah, 15 miles done now.
No, we did a little over 5 miles this past season, and then a mile before that, so we have a little over 6 miles.
And there's how many are public streets?
I don't have a
It
100%.
seems to me it was 55 miles of dirt streets, but a lot of those are private.
Yeah, there's about 40 miles of private, and I think there was about 45 miles of unpaved. We could, if you guys want to move forward with this, we can drill down into all that and get more details on it, but.
Tonight's conversation is about financing
Right,
larger
right.
projects.
And I don't know if Mr. Goodman or Mr. Schwartz want to add anything. I mean, I do think it is important to note that the chip seal projects that we've done thus far have been the ones who have been best suited for it. And as we look at some other areas, they are gonna get more complicated with drainage and the base that exists there and that type of thing. So some of those will be more expensive than what we've experienced the last couple of years, just wanting to make sure that you're aware of that.
Well, I'm definitely for moving forward with financing in order to do whatever we can do on the roads.
Hey, Al, this is David. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I would just say that, like Alan said, that, the map there in front of the council is just kind of demonstrative of a mix of both long and short-term projects that have a lot of different elements to it. So if you were to pick like 3 different scenarios, like one would be, like Alan was saying, cover all the streets. If you just kind of mentally could look at all of the dark lines, that's about a 1-to-7 ratio. So, you could cover a lot of streets, other surface treatments, or you could cover a whole lot less streets. So this is kind of a midstream look at it. And I think for staff or for me, really what I would be wanting or looking for is just direction philosophically where the council wants to head with, a lot of coverage or a little coverage or a mix. That's really what I just wanted to emphasize, from a technical perspective. Like Alan said, we can drill down on the particulars and the locations, and what we'll always probably do is default to coverage of more square feet. So if it's between 2 different streets, and one street's going to require a tremendous amount of drainage improvements, and I can go cover 3 times more on another street, we'll probably choose the other street, knowing that is probably philosophically where the council wants to be. But that's really important for me, and I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Kramer.
Yeah, I think we all want to see all the streets paved tomorrow, but that's obviously not practical. What I guess that my first question comes up, and I'll use the Lakeshore Drive out to the end of the city as an example. As we get larger projects that we're trying to do them all at one time by borrowing however many dollars we would borrow, how are we going to be able to get our arms around that? Because, this Lakeshore project has been a lot more complicated and time-consuming than I think we thought it was going to be. So, can we physically do this if we had a bigger chunk of money?
Well, I can try to address that if you want me to. I think, well, whether we do 10 million of debt or 18 million of debt, we probably won't be able to do all the projects in 1 year. This is probably a 2 or maybe even a 3-year plan. I think we would probably try to, if we're going to move forward on this, try to design as much of it as we can up front, because we've seen that we do get savings the bigger packages we put together. And to your point about Lakeshore Drive, I certainly appreciate that, although it is a large, fairly complicated project, but the issues really that we have had that have delayed that project have been related to the funding source, much more than the project itself. And it would be a whole different ballgame if we weren't using federal funds on those projects. And I think there's something that Director Goodman might want to add.
I know what I was going to ask. If instead of borrowing $10 million, can we get a line of credit for up to $10 million? We're not paying interest until we need it on a 3-year program, for instance.
That would be a question for NHA. I don't know if you have any comments on that. Did you hear the question, Leslie or Mike?
About a line of credit?
As opposed to just a loan of a set amount.
Yeah, that is something that, and sorry, Mike Meyer with NHA. Nice to be with you all virtually. That is something we could also look into. We have not seen as attractive as terms and rates on something like that, but that's something we could talk to some potential banks about. It would be the same banks that we would also be talking to if this loan was privately placed with a bank. So it's definitely an option that we could analyze.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add, Mr. Mayor and council members, that when you're doing road work, the expensive road work is when you do something like an FDR or you remove and replace. The inexpensive maintenance is about 1/10 of the cost of the remove and replace. So what you're trying to do as a city, or what you should be trying to do as a city, is get as many roads up into the higher range, the index range, as possible, up above 80. And when you get roads up there, then they can be maintained for a really long time for a really low price. Unfortunately, we have a lot of roads that are way down in the 20s and the teens. And on a scale of 1 to 100, that's really bad. And so those are expensive projects. So up front, with this kind of money, we can attack a lot of roads that are in really tough shape, and we can get them into that higher range, that higher index, and then we can maintain them for a long time. The useful life of a road is typically 20 years, unless you do maintenance, and it can be extended for 25 or 30 or 35 years by routine maintenance. And so while money's cheap, or cheaper than it could be, say, 5 years from now, I would recommend that we move forward and try and get as much done as quickly as possible. And then when money becomes tighter, then we're just maintaining roads instead of trying to replace roads a little bit at a time. So I think this is actually a good plan. I'm fiscally conservative, but in this case, because we have a funding source that can do the debt service, I think this is a really good idea.
Councilman Claffey?
Question on the interest here. So I did some quick back of the napkin calculations. So at the lower range, we're looking at $1.1 million in interest. At the higher range, we're looking at about $4 million in interest. Does that sound about accurate?
Leslie, do you want to take that? I think we have to look back at the chart here.
Okay. So at the lower end, if we would be at about 1.2 in total interest. Is that what you said?
Yep, about there. Yep.
Yep. And then at the higher end, for a 15-year for about $1.5 million annual debt service, we'd be over $4 million total interest.
Okay. And then, Director, can I just ask you a question? So if we were able to resurface, get road, $9 million worth of road out there, up over 80%, do you have any idea ballpark savings that would net us over the next 15 years?
Well, obviously, I don't know what interest rates might do, what inflation might do over the next 10 or 15 years, and so that's kind of hard to.
No, not necessarily with the loans themselves, but you said if we're able to refurbish these roads quickly, the cost of maintenance drops significantly, the roads last longer. Do you have a general idea of?
I don't. I would have to put some more effort into it. This is just talking off the top of my head while sitting here thinking about it. But I would say that the savings are going to be significant. Right now we have about $1.5 million or so dollars per year that we can use to actually put into roads. And so every year, next year, that $1.5 million is going to produce less because prices are going up, materials are going up, labor's going up, everything's going up. And so inflation is going to drive that up even faster. And so being able to do things, quickly is going to save us all that inflation over time. And then we're maintaining the roads in good working order. For example, the road that we're working on out San Joaquin and Lakeshore, that road could last 40 years if it's well maintained. Some really good advancements have been made in road replacement, and we're using those. And that's going to make those roads really good for a really long time if we properly maintain them. And so that's why I think if we get that, if we spend that money quickly, we're saving ourselves the inflation that we're going to incur over the next 15 years. If we can do the roads in 3 years instead of 15, I think we're going to be money ahead. We're going to save a lot of money just on inflation. And then we're putting a lot less money into that maintenance. You know, we're talking about 1.2 or $1.3 million for a mile of remove and replace versus $100,000 for a maintenance course every 5 years. So $20,000 a year versus 1.2 million per year. So the savings should be significant.
Now, another option was mentioned about chip sealing the unpaved roads in the city. And if we used this influx of cash to do that, you know, again, my back of the napkin calculations has that at about a $7 to $8 million project to do the bulk of the roads here in the city. You wouldn't recommend that course? You would recommend going for the bigger projects?
I think that the double chip seal has shown to be a value. I think it's a good option. It is, I think, limited because of the structure of the double chip seal. If you have a really good hard base and then you put that double chip seal on it, it should hold up really well. However, we have a lot of areas that aren't very hard. And so what will we have to do to prepare that so that we can put a double chip seal on it? We might find it cost prohibitive to go down that road. Sorry, no pun intended, but with that kind of effort, and also we have drainage issues in this community. If the whole community were sloped one direction, nice gentle slope, it might be easy to deal with the roads. But because we have a lot of terrain features, there's a lot of flood control issues on roads. What we've done in the avenues, and the reason we chose the avenues was we chose roads that didn't really have drainage issues. And there's really good hard surface up there. And so that's why we went up there, not because we necessarily care more about the people in the avenues, but because we knew we could get in there and get something done quickly for a relatively low price. But every part of the city isn't like that. And even in the avenues, there's a lot of areas where we aren't going to be able to do the double chip seal at the price that we've been able to get to date.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Prudhomme.
Mr. Goodman, you may not want to sit down. I don't recall again, so if you could refresh my memory. When we went out to bid on the double chip seal in the avenues, I remember we had a significant savings. And I thought you were asked if there were additional roads we could do, but it was just too much for staff to do at the time, and we just stayed with the original bid and accepted the savings. Is that what you recall?
I believe that is correct. We did have a lot going on. The first year we did the 1 mile for a little over 100,000. I think it's about 120. And then we did a little over 5 miles this year for about 350.
But we had budgeted about 6, I
I
thought.
think we budgeted 500,000.
We did.
500?
We budgeted 500. We didn't know what. We just kind of went, okay, let's do 5 miles. It'll cost us 500,000. But bids came in even lower than we anticipated.
Good thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. We love that.
Right. And when Measure V was first projected, I believe we were looking at about 1.7 and using the Measure P as a guide for that. And then now we're realizing about 2.5 is that in sales tax revenue.
Right.
So
That's correct. But there are a number of things that are taken out of that, as you well know.
right.
So it's not just for the projects that we do each year.
You mentioned
Thank
$1.5
you.
million is what you think of that $2.5 million is what you're basing your
I-
annual.
maybe I misspoke. I'm not the finance director, I'm not the city manager, but that's
I
kind
wasn't
of,
trying
that's
to,
kind
I
of
wasn't
what,
trying to catch you. I was just trying to.
that's kind of where my mind always is on the funds that are available for Measure V projects, is about 1.5, maybe 1.7.
Yeah, I mean, we have, with fund balance and stuff previously, we've, had savings, and so we've been able to put $2+ million towards projects most years. But, moving forward, assuming that we're spending everything, we think somewhere between 1.25 and 1.5 makes sense for this, which would still give us enough funding to keep our staff in place, invest some in equipment, still do, some smaller maintenance projects, and then we would, either way we go, we would recommend setting some money aside in like a reserve account, to protect ourselves, for a recession, and just make sure that we don't have any, issues with making that payment, when if we have a little dip. I mean, we expect, with all the projects we have going on, I mean, our sales tax growth has been well above what was projected a number of years ago. We have a lot of projects going that we expect will significantly increase that, but obviously we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're
Right.
stealing general fund dollars to pay for this. So.
Councilwoman Overton.
So I'm going to assume, if we go through with this, which I'm all for, that there'll be something brought back to us with the idea of roads and stuff, because I do agree. I know there's going to be some roads that are really not great and need drainage and everything and stuff, but I'd like to see, with us projecting that we're going to have new housing coming in and everything, of course, to get as much as we can with our city being drivable. Even some of the things that have been from, the community is, if they had one road that drove down, that would get them to their house, even though it may not be their specific road, but they might have to drive down that and come back up, something is better than nothing, So I would like to see that there may be some areas where the roads really do need to be fixed, but maybe we can put some roads in place there and then still do some chip seal on the roads that we can and try to spread it out a little bit. So I'm assuming, though, that we're just basically saying whether we want to move forward with these ideas. I am definitely all for these ideas, but we'll have a plan brought back to us with what.
Well, I mean, I think it would be helpful to know, if, sort of how aggressive the council wants to be, or, what one of those options you would like for us to focus on. So not only would we bring back, a finance package and more details on, they would actually get the rates for us and all that stuff, of course, and bring it back for approval. But through this process, of course, we would be working more on what projects we actually wanted to recommend and reviewing that with the council, so.
Councilman Kramer has.
Yeah, following a little on it. Leslie, you keep looking down at what I assume is a spreadsheet. Do you have any kind of a spreadsheet of the different options that we're talking about here? And how we would, amount of funds that we can get in a year using this, using that? And, I don't know.
I have them.
Found the devil's in the details, and so I'd like to see some details. I am interested in looking at, what you have to offer, but I need to have more information.
Absolutely, we can share that.
Okay, it sounds like, first of all, I am in favor of this program. I like to be conservative, though, and I think we need to look at, as Councilman Kramer says, look at the details. So, but I think we can provide staff with a direction to continue on a path to go forward. And we'll open it now for the public. Anybody from the public wants to comment on this? Anybody on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Do we have consensus from the council to give directions to our staff? Vice Mayor Pro-Doc.
I'm not in favor of this. When we proposed Measure V, we were going to do this as a pay-as-we-go. That's what we shared with the voters. We didn't want to encumber debt and be paying interest rates on, using our city funds to go to interest instead of actual work projects. I think this is a tortoise and hare kind of thing. I would like to see us look at the long haul and where we can be when the sun sets in 20 years. And as much as I would love to see all the roads done right away, I just can't agree with the amount of finance it's going to cost. I don't agree that we're going to be sitting at 2.75. I think those interest rates are much higher now, and they're going to continue to go up. I also think there's going to be an adjustment in the market. That's what the trends seem to show, and I do not support this. I think we need to do the pay-as-we-go. We've got more money coming in than we had originally anticipated, and we're doing more projects than our staff can keep up with the money we have. So that's my 2 cents, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Claffey.
I feel like have a similar mindset, with the exception being that if we can demonstrate that between doing projects at scale or by reducing maintenance costs, that this could be a savings for us. Speed's not necessarily a concern for me as much as the financial piece of this. And so if we're spending an extra $1 to $2 million of taxpayer money just to move faster, I'm really not in favor of that. If we are financing to make it more cost efficient in the long run, I think that makes a lot of sense. So that would be my exception.
If I might just add something, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Kramer, he yields to you right now.
Well, I just, that was one of the things that I'd been concerned about. If this item had come to me and said, we have an opportunity to save X number of dollars, Mr. Goodman, I agree with you. In this project, we have an identified project, we have an identified interest rate, and we need to borrow a small amount to get us across the finish line to get that done. I could be in favor of that. But there's very little detail here. As Mr. Kramer pointed out, the devil's in the details. I don't know that I'm agreeing with the finance issues. It just seems like we're kind of giving a rubber stamp to something that there's nothing tangible I can grab onto. I want to see, what are we buying? And I can't see that. Thank you.
Councilman Kramer?
Yeah, I fully don't want to invest in something that I don't have a lot more information on than I have right now. And I didn't mean to imply that I agree that we should go ahead and do this. I agree that I think we should get more details and do a comparative analysis. And I agree with Councilman Claffey, who said that let's see what benefits us the most. We don't know that yet. We don't have enough information on it. So to the degree that I would be agreeable, or would like to see us get a little more information on it, bring it back to us, and then we can know whether it's a good thing or not. So that's where I am.
Anybody else want some additional comments? I have just one comment based on that. We know that when we put the sulfur fire project out to bid, it came in substantially lower than we anticipated. And I think that had to do with the scale of the project. So I think there's some benefit at looking at this, but if we can identify a specific project that we can apply this to, or a generalized project that we can say, okay, we're going to do X amount of these streets for this amount of money based on some engineer's estimate, and then go for a project-based borrowing, that I'm in favor of that. And I don't know if we have that, be able to do that, Mr. Flora.
Well, I guess I don't have very much clarity on what to do at the moment. I appreciate Councilmember Claffey's comments about, I don't know how accurate the analysis will be, but we could certainly do some projections on what we think in that regard. And I'm not sure what to do with, we don't have enough detail, though. Obviously, we're not asking for action from the council tonight. We're wanting to get a reaction on whether there's interest in this or not, and then kind of figure out some direction to go in so that we can bring back that information. So, you know, it sounds like Councilmember Purdock really isn't interested in this option. But if there's a majority of the council that is, it would be really helpful to know kind of what range you're interested in looking at. Do you want to push and try to do $18 million worth of projects, or do you want to look at a little bit less, and then we can zero in on those scenarios and identify what projects that we would recommend based on that dollar amount and some things like that, I think would be really helpful for us in order to bring more specifics back.
Do we have some consensus on that? Councilman Claffey?
I think that depends a bit on the projects, right? So $18 million, that's over $4 million in interest payments. If we have the projects, and we can, you know, I understand that it's not going to be the most accurate, but project a savings based on scale and maintenance that is commensurate with a $4 million investment, then yeah, I think that could potentially be appropriate. I think the problem we have right now is we've been shown all of our projects are about $30 million. I think we really need to dig into which ones that we think by investing, getting this financing now and doing these projects at scale, we can save the most amount. So, $18 million, I think, could potentially be in the range if the numbers bear out. That would be my guidance.
So does the rest of the council agree with the total amount of the financing is less important than showing that we're going to be reducing our maintenance costs over time? I mean, if I understand Councilmember Claffey correctly, that's kind of where you're at.
Right. I mean, I think we need to show that the savings is going to be there. I think we all know the savings are going to be there, but I think what they want is, what do you think it's going to be? So, I mean, we all know that the cost of doing a road is going to go up every single year. Probably, in the next couple of years, you got another $500,000 instead of, $1.5 million, it's going to be $2 million. I've watched it raise through the whole time I've been here, and I think you guys on Planning Commission have seen that too. So we know it's going to go up. I think they just want an idea of what do we normally spend on maintenance a year? What do you feel it's going to be if we fix these roads? I think that's probably, and I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, it's something that we probably should present to our public why we're doing this. So.
How do we know that? We put a project out to bid, and it came back at almost half of what we anticipated. Put a project out to bid in the Lakeshore Drive, anticipating it was going to be around, say, 10 million. It came back at 8. So, I mean, we're actually seeing quite the opposite. I understand that, believe me, I understand that inflation is causing things to go up. And can we get ahead of that? In this presentation, we heard that it could take 3 years. Well, that's not immediately today, and we're looking at today's numbers. So in 3 years, what's that interest rate going to bear out? Nobody's crystal ball works any better than mine, and it looks like it's going up. That's the trend.
Councilman Kramer, look like you're...
Well, your comments, Mr. Mayor, I tend to agree with. I think we need to be looking at a group of one project or a group of projects, and that are especially need to be done that would have the most impact, for instance, on our PMI, as Mr. Goodman was talking about. But we need the detail, and just to say, well, do we go with 18 million or we go to 10 million, or that's not enough for me. We need to see the detail and a cost-benefit analysis, I guess, is what I'm looking for. I want to see our roads get improved. I do agree that a newly paved road is going to be a lot easier to maintain than one such as Rumsey Road that's full of potholes that are patched every year. I understand that, but I do think that it has to be project oriented, and I do want to see a lot more detail than what we've been presented with tonight before I'd say yes or no on going forward with it.
So, but today, we're deciding whether we should look further into
So,
it, correct?
looking further into it, I don't have a problem with it. Committing to it right now, no.
I don't think
I
we're
think we're
looking for
voting
an
on
estimate at this
anything,
point.
right?
We're not looking for a commitment at this point, just to directing staff.
Right.
Just in moving forward.
There is, the way I'm gauging is, there is some interest, but we have
Well, I
real
mean,
concerns of how much is really gonna save
it
us.
sounds like that there's, I mean, my expectation was that we were going to look at the comfort level of how much you're willing to finance and then tailor the projects for that. But it sounds like at least some of the council members want us to come up with some projects somewhere in that range and then figure out how to go from there. So we can try to take that
As I
approach.
said,
I wanna
Mr.
see
Manager,
detail.
it's not that I'm against this, it's if you came back with a project and we needed to borrow $1 million to get it done, and it would be a greater cost savings to do it all at once, I recognize the benefit in that. But to say we're gonna borrow $18 million and pay over $4 million in interest, I can't get behind that. So smaller projects for me, and you've got my vote.
I say, and I'm totally the opposite. I say that, prove to me that the 18,000 we borrow, that we're gonna save that $4,000 in the, or $4 million in the, okay, 18 million, and we're gonna save the $4 million in the maintenance over the next 20 years. Just common sense tells me that you're going to. And I don't think it's gonna be that hard to prove how much we're spending now on those same roads once they're maintained, how much we're not gonna be spending on those roads. I think that's what, they kind of need the proof that we're not gonna be spending that money that we're spending already on them.
Okay, well, I mean,
I'm for going for
show
the
me.
gusto.
I think, we can take a stab at it and see how it goes. Maybe this will, if we move forward with this, maybe it'll take a little bit longer to make a decision than we had expected. I mean, that's fine if we move forward and everyone's comfortable. I mean, the interest rates may be a little bit higher by then, but,
Lord God,
so
have a special meeting.
we'll try to take what we have and we'll put some projects together, and we'll talk to NHA about what we can do on the more details on the financing side. I mean, I think, but it sounds like the council's interest is really focused on maintenance savings and all that type of stuff. So we'll see what we can come up with.
All right.
If we spend the money, how much are we gonna save by doing it now, I think, and then later?
Well, I mean,
That's,
that's
pretty
based on
general
an
statement.
enormous amount of assumptions, but we can make them, we just,
that's what I say, that's what I'm saying, that's all assumptions, so there's
All
no
right.
guarantee in anything.
Time to move on to the next item, item number 6.
thank you, Leslie and Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Consider first reading of amendment to the Clearlake Municipal Code, Chapter 18-20-130C, Water Efficient Landscaping. Mr. Flora.
Actually, Mr. Goodman.
Oh.
It's been a minute since he's been up to the mic, so.
I'm already way over my quota of words for any council meeting. So, very simply, as part of the SB 1383, we are required to add these, a couple of items to our existing code. And if we don't have code to add it to, then we need to create code. But in the case of our city, we already have code that these additions can be made to. So the first one, item 6, has to do with the Water Conservation and Landscaping Act that has to be added into our code. And so we already have in our code, we already have some pretty strong wording that tells developers that we have to use water efficient landscaping techniques. All we're doing here is with this item is we're adding the specific act, the Conservation and Landscaping Act, by reference to our municipal code. So I don't, if you have any questions about what this is about, I can try and answer them.
Councilman Kramer.
What's the impact if we didn't do it? What would the state do to us?
I don't want to know. I'm not sure. We could be fine. They have we're already behind the curve on compliance with SB 1383. We thought we could get a waiver and give ourselves and get some more time, but there are some things that aren't waived. We did get the waiver. You authorized that, and that was great. And then we found out that this is some of the things that we have to comply with, and we actually have to comply with it by December 31st of 2021. So we're already 2.5 months behind the curve on this. So what they will do, I believe, from what I've read, there are fines that they could impose on the city. So.
It is the state's water, by the way.
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Claffey, any comments? Councilwoman Overton? We'll open this item to the public. Are there any public comments on this item? Madam Clerk, or any here in the council chambers?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. The council is being asked to consider the first reading of ordinance number 259, 2022, and set the second reading. Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that we accept ordinance number 259-2022, read it by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Clearlake, adding verbiage to chapter 18.20.130.3 of this Clearlake Municipal Code regarding water efficiency landscaping requirements, and setting the second reading for, what was the date?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
March 17th.
March 17th.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Overton and a second by Councilman Kramer. We'll go to our electronic voting.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, could you read the results of the vote?
Mr. Mayor, it was unanimous.
Awesome. All right, we go to item number 7. Consider first reading of the amendment of Clear Lake Municipal Code, Chapter 9-1, Building and Housing. Mr. Flora.
Mr. Goodman.
Mr. Goodman.
Yeah, same thing, basically.
Okay.
So again, this has to do with SB 1383. We're adding some additional verbiage to section or chapter 9.1 of the building code that has to do with requirements pertaining to the waste and debris that is part of the construction process, and how much of that has to be recycled and how much of it can just be disposed of. I believe the goal is to recycle 65% of that debris stream, and so we don't currently have anything in our code about this, so we're just adding the verbiage right from the state, their requirements to the code in 9.1.
Okay. Do you have any questions from staff? If not, we'll open it up to the public. Do we have any public comment on this item, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, we do not.
All right, we'll bring it back to the council. Anybody wants to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the first reading of ordinance 260-2022, read it by title only, and waive further reading and set March 17th, 2022 for second reading and adoption.
Okay.
Need to read the title.
We have a motion by Councilman Claffey and a second by Councilman Kramer.
Doesn't he need to read the title on that? Yeah, you need to read the ordinance. Just the title.
Just the title.
I'll go down to the ordinance. Right there, the first section.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake adding Chapter 9-1.50 of the Clear Lake Municipal Code regarding the recycling of construction and demolition debris.
And I'll second.
So we had a motion by Councilman Claffey and a second by Councilman Kramer.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Mr. Goodman.
I would just add real quick that Mr. Goodman has been coordinating with Public Services Director of the county, Lars Ewing, on this, and the city of Lakeport, and I think it's likely there'll be some more exciting state-mandated revisions to our municipal code in our future.
Can't
This is,
wait.
this is all has to do with garbage.
By the end of the year, he hopes he never has to speak to us again, right?
All right, we go to item number 8. And that's my item. Do I make the presentation?
Yes, you're on. Mr. Rothstein, I'm adding him as a panelist, but the show's all yours.
Okay. In March of last year, the Lake County Board of Supervisors established an ad hoc committee, Community Visioning Forum Planning Committee, which I was a part of. The purpose of it is to develop recommendations for meaningful action and activities to identify barriers, promoting local governments that hears and honors all voices, build bridges where there may be walls, foster tolerance, respect, equity, and inclusion, beginning with education and culmination in action, promote nonviolent and nonviolent conflict resolutions. I want to bring a little personal story to this and why it's important for me that we support this item. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but I have 2 sons and 1 daughter. One daughter is, master's degree in evolutionary biology from UC Davis and University in Canada. And I have 2 sons. Both were adopted. They're small, brown, and Guatemalan. And the difference in how these 2 kids went through the Davis School District, as you know, the city of Davis is, similar to the Republic of Berkeley. It's pretty similar. And we all have to understand that we can all learn a little bit more about being equitable and have tolerance to people that might not look the same as you or have other disabilities. So it's important to me that we fund this program and learn a little bit more about being equitable and tolerant of other people's, whether they look different or act different or have other different opinions about what we should do. So I hope if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, Councilwoman Overton.
I need some clarification. I'm not quite sure what this agreement is. I mean, like, what is it that you're wanting us to?
If I may answer that, the contract is for $33,000, in which we hope to have training in how to solve and direct some of these issues when they pop up. Is that
Training for
all of us?
our staff, councils,
Yes.
supervisors, everybody throughout?
Everybody that's in
And
it.
so this 33,000 is split among
It's-
everybody, or is this 33,000 just ours?
No. It's a $33,000 contract, and it's paid for by the county, the city of Clearlake, and the city of Lakeport based on their population.
So we're each paying a share, our fair share, what they consider.
And I've also have, Matthew is on the line there on Zoom. Matthew, if you want to add something to it, that would be great.
Absolutely, Mayor Slotman, and I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to address your council. Council Member Overton, if you're interested in details of what is enabled by this agreement, it entails facilitation of 3 public community visioning forums, one of which will be held in the city of Clearlake. And these forums will offer space for development of common language in our communities surrounding our efforts to become more just and inclusive, as Mayor Slotman described. And also provide a venue for the experiences and perspectives of community members to be shared. And our hope is that the understanding gained through this process will help us identify where there are opportunities to promote greater diversity, equity, and inclusion in our communities. And the understanding gained through that process will inform future work. We also expect through this process to identify key partners. Some of those may be on your city council, some of those may be your constituents that are interested in contributing to these efforts for the long term. And as Mayor Slitman stated, some DEI leaders will be trained. Our selected facilitator, Nicole McAllister Anderson, is a teacher by profession historically, and she really is excellent in terms of developing and giving the tools and language needed to help us to have difficult community conversations. So we're really grateful that she's had an interest and expressed a desire to work with Lake County in this respect. And also we'll be working with Ms. Anderson's firm to identify likely 1 to 2 diversity, equity, and/or inclusion-related gaps in our communities and analyze available data toward an impact action plan. And Ms. Anderson's firm's work can also entail some recommendations of next steps to our governing bodies, both with the County of Lake and the cities. And our hope is that this complement represents what we feel is a great value. We did have 2 very qualified firms express interest in this contract. This one was at a significantly lower level of cost and really promised a great value. So we're really excited to see this work get started, and we're really grateful for all of the partnerships that have been developed thus far. And the City of Clearlake being one of the very important ones among those. And we're grateful also that many of our tribal governments and other community leaders have expressed an interest in being engaged and having these conversations and doing this work over a longer period of time. And we definitely thank you for considering this cost-sharing agreement this evening.
And are the
Thank you.
tribes contributing anything to this if we do this?
Excuse me?
Are the tribes going to contribute anything?
Not at this point.
And do we know what our share is actually going to be?
8,000 of the 33,000.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kramer?
Question. You mentioned programs to be developed. Are they going to be programs in which we'll be asked to contribute additional funds? And who's going to get trained? Staff of the city and the county, cities and the county? That question's open for either of you.
I think it's both staff, both other people that are interested in how to learn to be.
Okay, and that training is going to be inclusive of the 33,000? Or is that
part
an
of it,
additional?
yes.
So let's just take the senior center, for instance. If we have this here and I want my staff to come and be trained and go through this class, they're able to do that?
See is supposed to, as part of the contract, training trainers here to be able to take it over. So this is her first step, and C will be training trainers that then will come to your staff.
Okay.
So hypothetically, Lieutenant Hobbs could be trained to do this, and then he would share that training amongst everyone at CPD and maybe the sheriff's office and other groups.
Is that correct, Matthew?
Yeah, so the City of Clearlake will certainly have the opportunity to weigh in on which leaders from your organization or outside of your organization you'd like to have involved in the train-the-trainer activities. And we'll get those lists and schedule training and let everybody know about it.
So I would like to clarify, I don't see that part in actually the scope of work in the contract, but that is included somewhere with this 33,000?
So I guess it is included, the train-the-trainer aspect is included. It's on the 8th page of the agreement. There are 8 days that we will have with our facilitator that are for the purposes of planning meetings and also training the trainer. It's kind of split between 2 pages, so I understand the concern of where it's found. At the top of the description of the community vision forms, there's the assumption that we will do a train the trainer model and build capacity of county, city, and other governmental staff and community members. And also that we will have those 8 total days. So some of those days with the trainer in anticipation of the community visioning forums will have a training focus, and we'll invite the people that you encourage us to invite to those sessions.
Councilman Claffey?
I don't think Councilmember Kramer's question was answered around the ongoing, or the scope of this.
It was
So
not.
The first part is 8K. So as one of the references was the city of Albany, I took a look at their report, and there are several action items that presumably will also incur some investment. And I guess my question is, have we budgeted this item? Has the county budgeted this item? And what, even if it's just a ballpark idea, do we have a general idea of what the cost would be to fully execute this program?
Matthew?
Okay. So at this stage, this agreement covers, providing recommendations. And so it would be within the authority of each jurisdiction to take those recommendations, see what issues may have been identified, and take whatever action you feel is appropriate. So we don't have a way without having these initial investigative steps occur first of estimating entirely what any eventual costs may be. But this is a first initial exploratory step to just understand our communities a little bit better.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think that we could identify several gaps that we know exist, and potentially this $8,000 could go to filling those gaps immediately rather than looking for recommendations to fill it for these gaps, which we already to some degree know exist. I'm curious about the strategy.
Any more discussion here on, did you get your question answered enough to vote on this? We'll open it to the public then. Any public comment on it? Go ahead, ma'am, come to the microphone.
I guess my first question is, I'm not sure how you started the discussion. It relates to your daughter and your son?
It's just a personal experience that I know that we need to learn to be more, all of us be more equitable and tolerant in situations.
Okay, I just thought I'd missed something. No, it's definitely something that we need as a community, but I think there would be a possibility of getting more of an idea. Like you said, that you already know that there are gaps that need to be addressed, and maybe you're paying to have someone show you those gaps that you already are aware of. So maybe it just seems a little more, getting the details down. But, it's never a bad thing, though. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, if any,
Just one more.
any other comment from the public, Madam Clerk?
There's one hand raised on the Zoom.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm working with a group at the county level on a project that's similar to this, and I really am interested in how that might relate and where that communication is coming, because we do have equity classes that I have been taking as well as missing that we're going to have an opportunity to be able to make up. So how much has this been coordinated with the county, where we're actually doing online classes and group classes and have formed equity teams within some of our structures on boards and leadership committees? So I'm just curious, we're looking at train the trainer, where we're actually, and I was able to late last year take an equity training class online. So, I'm not sure how this all fits together, and that would be my question. And how much have we reached out to the county to learn what they are doing, and how does this fit in for their organizations, both internally and as volunteer representatives on boards and councils?
The county is part of this process.
Okay, well,
So we have,
I hear that it's designed to be that, but I'm not hearing that that's had a communication or an approval from the county, or that there's a relationship of how that would mesh together. I'm kind of, that's a missing piece from what I've heard you discuss today.
Okay, Matthew, I don't know if what this program that Cheryl is referring to, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely certain, but I can speak, I think, to some of what Ms. Ullman is saying. The county has undertaken some internal organizational training on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I think that may be what Ms. Ullman is referring to. But these community visioning forums are public-facing, so there are opportunities for listening sessions for the public to work with a skilled facilitator and, air their experiences. And so this is a community-focused effort as opposed to an internal organizationally focused effort. So I hope that clarification is helpful.
I think it is. Thanks. The county has approved this program, and at the Tuesday council meeting of the city of Lakeport, this was approved, correct, Matthew?
So, you could let Matthew. So the county's waiting to see what the cities do. So they haven't brought the agreement forward. The city of Lakeport did approve their share on Tuesday.
Is there any more public comment?
That was Cheryl, was it already?
No, we haven't closed it. I was wondering if there's any more.
Any more public comment?
No, I understand what you're saying, but we are actually being trained directly, online programs, as well as creating equity groups to have a representation into the government entity that I'm participating with as a chair. So that's where I guess I don't necessarily see the facilitation. We already are putting things into place. I'm working with behavioral health. So we have an equity committee. We have identified people, a chair of that committee. We are moving forward, and I don't know how what you're planning to do interacts with this. So I just don't know. I'm not clear. Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that. Madam, do you still want to say something? Come forward. Yes.
Okay, now you can talk to me.
Yeah, I'm just asking, is what they're doing going to be redundant?
Yeah,
Could they?
my question is just who is doing the training? Is there a outfit that's doing it? And
That's the entity that we're trying to support with our part of the.
that's the community visioning forum, that's what they're called?
The contract will be with Nicole Anderson and Associates.
McCall Anderson.
Yeah, that's the contract, and the county pays the significant portion. We pay a part, and the city
I see.
of
Okay.
Lakeport takes a part based on population.
Could you repeat that again? I didn't get
The county pays part of it when we have.
No, the division or the people that are doing the training?
The contractor is being proposed is Nicole Anderson and Associates.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more public comment? If not, bring it back to the council.
There are 2 hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead. We have more Zoom calls. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I thought I had lowered.
So the next one.
Next one.
Go ahead, Savannah.
Hi, I just had a question on the public facing forums, but will these be hosted in Spanish as well as English?
I'm sure we
Can
can
you answer
have,
that question?
well, if we have it also in Spanish, I'm sure we can facilitate a translator.
And is that included in the cost? I know translators are usually costly. I just raise that as a question because if there is a large Hispanic population within our community, and if they're not hosted in Spanish, I would find that the research and the energy that we're placing into this would miss a lot of the gaps without the Spanish facilitation.
We're going to have to clarify that. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Do you know the
Would you
answer?
like me to speak to that, Mayor Slotin?
Yes, please.
So that has come up as a topic of conversation with the Community Vision Forum Planning Committee. And Savannah, if you're interested in learning more about the work of that group, you can go to the County of Lake website and in the search bar, enter Community Vision Forum Planning Committee. And there are a number of resources that do come up. We will be working with our facilitator to ensure that we have appropriately language accessible options available. We've looked at a couple of different models for that. As you may be aware, with some previous town hall meetings, we did a simulcast in Spanish. So we've looked at that option, but sometimes the pace of simulcasting can be difficult. So we have also considered the possibility of meetings hosted in Spanish entirely. So we'll be working with the facilitator to nail down the final details regarding that, and we'll definitely make appropriate announcements when the time comes. And again, if you need to connect with me, or if you'd like to be involved in this effort as well, my email address is Matthew, MATTHEW, .Rothstein, ROTHSTEIN, @lakecountyca.gov. Love to hear from you.
And are the advertisements for these forums facilitation, but if the Hispanic community doesn't see it written in the language that's their primary language, they'll also not attend.
Absolutely, and that is something that we would definitely intend to do. One of the members of our Community Vision Forum Planning Committee, Angela Correa-Malakin, works with the Lake County Office of Education on many efforts to ensure language accessibility, and we're just so grateful for her participation, and I would certainly see her as a key partner in making sure that we're accessible.
Okay, any other public comment?
There are no more hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Councilman Kramer.
Yeah, one more question. I'm reading through the contractor, I actually read through it fairly rapidly, but is this contract with the County of Lake, or is it with the County of Lake, the City of Lakeport, and the City of Clearlake? Or we're asking to pay our share of it, but who's the contract actually with?
Well, Matthew could confirm, I believe the contract would be with the county, and then the agreement that is included here would just be the, essentially the two cities agreeing to provide a cost share so that the county could pay the contractor. But if that's not correct, Matthew, please chime in.
That is correct. Thank you very much.
All right. Councilwoman Overton.
Okay, well, it sounds like after listening to Ms. Allman that there's something going on already, and as the county is so famous for, and that is duplicating services. So I'm not saying that we don't need this, but I would like to table this till the next meeting so that we can do some research to see if what Cheryl's going through is going to actually be the same thing that this is. So that's my thought, because actually right now, I wouldn't want to vote on this, on that perspective, that there might be something already in place, and are we going to turn around and spend money on something that's really not necessary if there's something already that it sounds like is already being done?
Okay.
I understand what you're wanting, though. I do. Don't think I don't. I do.
Matthew, can you have your hand raised there?
Yes, and Councilmember Overton, I can confirm 100% that there have not been other publicly facing forums happening in parallel. These are, like I said previously in response to Ms. Ullman, these are community facing events. These are public forums, and the efforts that Ms. Ullman was referencing were organizationally focused efforts.
And maybe I misunderstood. I thought it was you were going to train to certain people. Am I, or is this open to, maybe I'm misunderstanding it then.
We need more information.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I need to study it more. I'm not saying it's not something that doesn't need to maybe happen, but I'd like to give, 2 more weeks. I don't think will be detrimental.
Okay, it sounds like the consensus here is that people need more information. Councilman Kramer? Councilman Claffey? More information?
Yes, but I'd like to take a different slant on this. Like, this program is, the topic's important. I think if we choose to invest in this, we should be investing it in a way that, with the strategy that the city determines, not necessarily the county determines.
I don't think it's the county that's going to determine it. It's going to be community-based. We take all the information from the community and then go from there, not from the county itself.
No, I agree, but even this step is determined by the county, right? You know, this is an $8,000 investment in a direction that, you know, potentially the city council might choose to use that money or more money or less money to go in a different direction. So I think that should be the crux of the conversation if we put this on the agenda next week. And if this falls in line with what our vision is and where we want to invest, then I'm all for it.
All right, I guess we'll table this item.
Well, so we've had a couple requests for more information. I just want to, I mean, it sounded like Councilmember Overton didn't have specific requests for more information. She just wanted to spend more time doing research. Councilmember Kramer mentioned having more information. I just want to know, is there something that we need to work with the county and help provide to the council related to this, or do you just want to spend some more time looking into it before you make a decision?
Well, one, I'd maybe like to talk to Cheryl to find out what her program is, because with the way she's talking, like, it's kind of similar to what this is. So that's one. Where is she getting that from? That's what I would like to know. And then, yeah, I just don't want to be duplicating, because,
No,
I mean,
that's fine. I just want to know if there's
yeah.
anything that we need to
Right.
do.
So that's my thing, is I don't want to duplicate any services.
Councilman, Vice Mayor Purdock.
This is an item that's kind of a topic right now. It's one of the things that actually determines whether you get grants or not, is whether you're doing equity training in that. I know that my employer does equity training. I'm sure that Post requires equity training. I'm sure the city provides equity training to the staff. What I'd like to know is what kind of numbers are being generated in these other communities? How many people are coming in to take this training? Are we getting some bang for our buck, so to speak? That's the data I'd like to see if we're going to look at this again in 2 weeks, is what's the success rate on this project in other communities? I agree with it. I think it's something that's important, and everyone should be treated fairly. But I hear a lot of I don't knows, and it seems like a small amount, but
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Overton. You just said.
I mean, I agree that we need to make sure that, you know, everybody is being trained. This is a very, you know, and I agree that, and then I know what you're saying about the difference of people being treated. I see it all the time. So I'm not saying I just want to make sure we're not duplicating the services, but two, I want to know exactly, because there's different things here. It says it's public, but then he said it was just going to be certain people trained to train the trainers, and so I'm just kind of confused of what's really going to be happening, but I definitely want to talk to Cheryl to find out what her program is, because it sounded so similar to this, so.
Well, it sounds like me, it's similar to what Mr. Purdock goes through with Adventist Health. And, I think what the difference is that these programs are based on some equity thing and not based on the situation here in Lake County. I mean, our demographics are different depending on where you are. This is not something, and the idea of this one is to really focus on what Lake County and Clearlake needs in this kind of training. That's why we say it's community-based. The community tells us what it is. It's not just a program that Adventist Health gets from corporate.
I'm talking about employers versus community, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So if we're going to train the community, I'd like to know how many community come to a training like this? Are we going to pack the room, or in other jurisdictions, is it something that kind of?
Just depends on how interested we are in doing those.
So it may come to marketing. I'd like to know, what is the value, for the $8,000? Are we gonna, if we're to train the trainers and then we go out in the communities and we're teaching people in public settings, okay. What's the success?
Well,
You're off the hook, Lieutenant.
I would say you've kind of got some ideas of some of our concerns, and maybe in 2 weeks, we can have some answers to some of this stuff. I mean, I would say
Okay.
that, is it gonna hurt to go another 2 weeks? We're not saying no, we're just saying,
I'd just like to know more about it. How is it implemented?
okay. Sorry, I couldn't be more clear on how it's supposed to do, but.
It's okay, it doesn't sound like you know, so sounds like.
It's, if we think that we don't need this kind of training anymore,
Nobody said that.
I mean, then we're really
no, I didn't.
being trouble.
Nobody said that.
That's what I'm saying, okay? If we don't think we need it, then, we might be the problem. That's just my thing, because we don't know exactly, I mean, we have a large American Indian population. We have a significant Hispanic population,
Indigenous.
and so it's.
I don't think any of us is saying that. I think we're just saying we need to know more.
I want to know how it's implemented. We pay the $8,000. What happens first? What happens next? How is it implemented into the community? I just want to know that.
Okay. Right, Matthew, sounds like we have some homework to do here. Thank you for participating in it. We have no motion to approve here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
We'll go to city managers and councilmen reports. City manager.
Only just a couple of items. It sounds like I feel like we've gotten this information a couple of times now, but it sounds like the cash fire cleanup is really done now. Our finance director is going to go put on her pink hard hat and do a visual inspection tomorrow, make sure that that's the case. And then I think maybe there's a little bit of stormwater BMPs or something that need to be done, but great job in making that all happen. Impressive. I wanted to, you probably all have seen this, but we did learn this week about receiving what I think is a pretty exciting grant, a little over $1.5 million from Caltrans, the Clean California program, which is going to include a number of things, including starting some cleanup programs, which of course we can always use, some additional infrastructure in Austin Park, which will make our concerts more comfortable in the summer, and a number of murals around the city in coordination with the Rural Arts Initiative, and then wayfinding signs and sort of some new branding Clearlake signs that will be some large ones on Old Highway 53 and all around town. So pretty exciting. Again, Miss Young and Crystal from her staff put in the bulk of the effort on that and working with the Rural Arts Initiative, everyone. So that one's going to be a fun project to see. It's going to be a real visible impact, and it's going to be neat. You all should have the flyers from the Homestead Program. This is something that got a little lost in the shuffle over the last year or so, but it's officially rolled out now. The website's up. There's an online application. We've started sharing these with local employers to see if they, have interested employees and want to make sure that the Adventist Health gets some. So anyway, just share that, encourage people to go to the website and apply, and we'll see what the response is like. There's a list of city properties that we're willing to offer to these folks, I believe, on the website, so all that information's there. Really, I guess just the last thing, I had the opportunity kind of at the last moment to go take a walk through the tribal health facility here next door, which is coming along quite nicely. It looks like soft opening probably beginning of May for that, but it's extremely impressive, the quality of work, and that's going to be an amazing facility. So very proud that they decided to put such a significant investment in Clearlake. So with that, that's my report.
Councilman Kramer.
I don't have too much. The only meeting that I had since our last council meeting was a Lake Links, another weekly board meeting to search for ways to finance our Pay Your Pal and volunteer driver and Meadowlinks programs. We've made some progress on that. We've got some potential folks, agencies that may help to provide funding, which we estimate could be up to $100,000 between now and September, about 6 months. So hopefully on Monday we'll be able to facilitate the plan, get it out, and hopefully get some money coming in soon. That's all I have.
Okay, we'll go across there. Councilman Claffey.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the community and, of course, all the council members here. The Rotary Club held their seafood boil this last weekend over at the Senior Center. It was a great event only because we have such strong community support here. So I want to thank all of you. The proceeds of that, we're working with the city to look at some projects in the Burns Valley Sports Complex. I think it's really important that as the city invests in certain areas, our community should as well to help augment that. We've seen some great results here over at Austin Park. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Overton.
I do not have anything to report.
All right, we'll go to Vice Mayor Perdo.
Well, been a little busy. We had the LTA Executive Committee meeting yesterday. We'll be moving a few items to the governing board for the LTA regarding budget and contracts with Davy Bates and Associates, but you guys will see that on the agenda. The Clearlake Chamber of Commerce has been working on building a new website, went out to RFP, and we will be looking at a couple of design options soon on that. We received a amazing budget report and proposed budget for the next fiscal year that looks really good. So we're moving forward that way, and also working on our strategic plan at the chamber, which is very exciting. Had a good general membership meeting last night. I think everybody there had a decent time, and Blue Zones came and made a presentation on Blue Zones Lake County project and what they plan on doing in the future. Always good to learn about that. And last, on your calendars, if you wouldn't mind putting down May 14th as an important date to come and visit the city of Clearlake. Adventist Health will be sponsoring and supporting Blue Zones project in a big event, and there'll be more marketing and things coming out soon. May 14th. Okay, good. So all that's good. May 14th, yeah, all day, and I hope to see a lot of folks there, mostly all of you, and that concludes my report.
I didn't attend any meeting, so I have nothing to report at this time.
Can I ask Russ, isn't there
Councilwoman Overton has a redo.
There's a website for the Blue Zone for people to go into, and like, you get to learn your age, like what you really are.
The real age test.
Yeah, the real age test. And I mean, that's really kind of critical for us to find out, like, our health here. And I know that's kind of what they've been promoting people to kind of do ahead of time. So if people can go in and do that.
So yeah, if you log in or search in your search engine, Blue Zones Lake County project, you can go to the real age test. It'll pop up in your search engine. Do your real age test. What it does is it gives a good data source, which is what they're trying to accomplish, and will help them better design programs for our community. And it's also fun because it tells you, in some cases, you're a little bit younger than what your chronological age is.
Well, I don't know about that.
I was 4
Or
years.
other cases, it may be a little older, and you might want to work on that.
I was 4 years younger.
See, there you go, Mr. Mayor. Wasn't that fun?
All right, Any future agenda items? If not, we'll take a 5-minute